Imagine waking to the whisper of frost on your window, the creak of ancient floorboards in a house that holds secrets deeper than graves. For sisters, bound by blood and a father's dying curse, stare into the candle's flickering flame. Men die, one murmurs, her voice like wind through barren branches. And widows inherit everything. But what price does the soul pay when justice comes not from heaven, but from hands stained with sin? In the shadowed valleys of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where the earth itself seemed to breathe with the weight of old grudges and unspoken oaths, the year 1837 dawned like a judgment day deferred. The air carried the scent of turned soil and distant rain, mingling with the faint, acrid tang of woodsmoke from hearths that burned low through endless nights. This was a land forged by immigrants who had fled tyranny across the seas, only to wrestle their own demons from the stubborn clay. Here, amid rolling fields quilted in shades of emerald and gold, stood the Brennan family farm, a sprawling dominion of 847 acres that pulsed like a living heart, its boundaries etched by the serpentine twist of Mill Creek to the north and the dusty ribbon of the Lancaster Pike to the south. Patrick Brennan, a gaunt figure with eyes like storm clouds over County Cork, had clawed this empire from nothing. Arriving in 1799 with calloused hands and a soul scarred by English evictions, he built it stone by stone, acre by acre. His grand stone farmhouse rose like a sentinel, its walls hewn from local quartz that gleamed under moonlight, whispering of permanence. Barns vast enough to swallow herds of 200 cattle loomed nearby, their timber frames groaning under the weight of hay bales stacked like ancient monoliths. Grain silos, tall and sentinel-like, pierced the skyline, guardians of sustenance that had seen the county through blizzards that buried men alive. By 1836, the farm's value eclipsed that of entire villages, a testament to Patrick's unyielding will. But as autumn leaves bled crimson that October, Patrick lay dying in his four-poster bed, the room heavy with the smell of laudanum and impending loss. His breath rattled like dry leaves in a gale, and around him gathered his 4 daughters, Bridget, Catherine, Margaret, and Sarah. No sons to carry the name, no male heirs to shield the legacy from the cold blade of Pennsylvania's inheritance laws. Those statutes, penned in ink as unforgiving as iron, decreed equal division among children. Without a son, the farm would fracture like a shattered chalice, parcels sold to appease tax collectors whose ledgers hungered like biblical locusts, creditors circling like vultures over a fresh kill. The sisters, raised on tales of their grandfather's dispossession in Ireland, families torn asunder, scattered to famine winds, knew this fracture would be more than material. It would sever their very essence. Land ain't mere earth, Patrick had rasped in his thick brogue, his gnarled fingers clutching the quilt like roots in soil. It's your bloodline, your covenant with God. Lose it, and ye lose your soul's anchor. The Almighty gave us this ground as a test of faith, of fortitude. Betray it, and divine wrath follows, sure as the reaper's scythe. Lancaster County in those days was a tapestry of faith and toil, where German Anabaptists and Irish Catholics tilled side by side, their plows carving furrows that echoed Old Testament parables. Property was sacred, a divine grant echoing Genesis, subdue the earth and have dominion. But for women, dominion was illusory, tethered to husbands or brothers. The Brennans, though, were no wilting lilies in this garden of thorns. Bridget, at 28, was the eldest, a woman whose intellect cut like a scythe through fog. Her hazel eyes, framed by raven hair pulled taut in a bun, hid a mind that devoured ledgers and legal tomes by candlelight. She had managed the farm's accounts since Patrick's vision dimmed, calculating yields and interests with a precision that shamed bankers. Yet she cloaked it all in modest smiles, a veil of femininity that disarmed suspicion. Catherine, 26, possessed an uncanny gaze, her emerald eyes piercing souls like arrows from a hidden quiver. She read men as one might decipher ancient runes, spotting greed in a twitch of the lip, weakness in an averted glance. It was as if she channeled some ethereal insight, a gift or curse from the saints themselves. Margaret, 24, bloomed with an otherworldly beauty, porcelain skin, golden curls cascading like sunlight on wheat, lips curved in perpetual enigma. But beneath that angelic facade lurked a pragmatism forged in fire, decisions made without tremor, like pruning dead branches to save the tree. Sarah, the youngest at 21, wielded a voice like honeyed wine, smooth and intoxicating, capable of weaving illusions or shattering them. She adapted like water to stone, playing maiden, confidant, or avenger as the moment demanded. United, they were unbreakable, a quartet bound by more than blood, perhaps by a pact whispered in the womb. As Patrick's coffin lowered into the loamy earth that November, under a sky heavy with unshed rain, the sisters convened in the kitchen. The room, warmed by a hearth where flames licked iron pots, smelled of baked bread and lingering grief. Lamplight danced on flagstone floors worn smooth by generations, casting elongated shadows that twisted like tormented spirits. Frost etched crystalline patterns on the windows, nature's own scripture of isolation and resolve. "The taxes will devour us like wolves on a lamb," Bridget intoned, her voice steady as a judge's gavel. She paced, the hem of her black morning dress whispering against the stone. 2 years, at most, before we're beggars or scattered to the winds. Catherine leaned against the oak table, fingers tracing knots in the wood as if divining secrets. "Marriage is the devil's bargain. Husbands will claim pieces, drag us apart. Our loyalties fractured, like Cain turning on Abel." Margaret's eyes gleamed in the firelight, reflecting embers that mirrored inner turmoil. "But what if we bend marriage to our will? Husbands as tools, not chains. The Bible speaks of widows inheriting Ruth in the fields, claiming her due." Sarah, perched on a stool, her youthful face solemn, voiced the unspeakable. "Husbands die, sisters. In accidents, illnesses, divine will, perhaps. And widows? They keep all. No division, no loss. The land stays whole, our souls intact." A hush fell, broken only by the pop of embers. Was it sin they contemplated, or survival echoing the harsh justice of the Old Testament? Abraham's sacrifice, David's cunning tales where faith demanded blood. The air thickened, charged with spiritual electricity, as if unseen angels weighed their words on golden scales. By dawn, the pact was sealed, invisible yet ironclad. They would court the county's elite, men of wealth, influence, power, to shore up the farm's defenses. But unity demanded sacrifice. Separation was anathema. The land, their holy grail, must remain undivided. If husbands proved obstacles, well, Providence had ways of intervening. The first to wed was Bridget, her union a calculated symphony of charm and strategy. Thomas Hennessy, a 42-year-old attorney of Irish stock, widower sans heirs, embodied salvation. His practice in Lancaster town handled estates worth fortunes. His coffers could quench the tax flames. They met at Sunday Mass in St. Mary's Church, where incense curled like prayers heavenward, and stained glass bathed the pews in ethereal hues. Hennessy, with his salt and pepper hair and commanding baritone, found Bridget's discourse on law riveting, a rarity in a woman who could quote Blackstone while embroidering samplers. Their courtship unfolded like a well-plotted novel, walks along Mill Creek's banks, where willows wept into murmuring waters, dinners in the farmhouse, candlelight gilding silverware as laughter echoed off beamed ceilings. Hennessy spoke of courtroom triumphs, eyes alight with ambition for a judgeship. Bridget listened, her hand on his, weaving empathy like a spider's silk. "You've borne loneliness like a cross," she murmured, invoking shared Catholic sorrows. Within months, he proposed under a harvest moon, the air crisp with apple cider. And promise. The December 1837 wedding was a spectacle, the church adorned with evergreens and holly, symbolizing eternal life amid winter's death. Guests in finery filled the nave, whispers of the Brennan fortune's revival buzzing like bees. Hennessy moved into the stone house, his trunks bearing not just clothes, but deeds and trusts restructuring the estate. A family trust, he devised, binding the acres indivisibly, providing for all sisters under one roof. It was legal alchemy, turning vulnerability to armor. Yet cracks appeared swiftly, like frost veining glass. Bridget's devotion to her sisters eclipsed marital bliss. Catherine, Margaret, and Sarah remained ensconced, their presence a constant chorus. Hennessy's pleas for privacy met icy rebuffs. "Blood before vows, Thomas," Bridget snapped, her eyes flashing like lightning over fields. He noticed her poring over lists of eligible bachelors, querying their finances with feigned innocence. "For my sisters' sakes," she claimed, but her tone carried calculations chill. Tensions crested on March 15, 1838, a morning shrouded in fog so dense it swallowed the world, muffling birdsong and rendering familiar paths alien. Over breakfast, amid the clink of porcelain and steam from oat porridge, Hennessy broached relocation, a Philadelphia practice, urban grandeur, a fresh start. "Our future beckons," he urged, voice hopeful. Bridget's spoon halted mid-air. This is our future, the soil our fathers sanctified with sweat and prayer. Leaving? It's betrayal of divine trust. Words escalated, echoes bouncing off walls like accusations in a confessional. Your sisters can join us later, he pressed. Her gaze turned glacial, a soul-deep warning. We don't abandon kin. Ever. It's against God's natural order, family as one body, indivisible. He departed on horseback, the fog cloaking his form like a shroud. The mare, a spirited bay named Epona, vanished into the mist. Hours later, she returned riderless, flanks lathered, eyes rolling in primal fear as if she'd glimpsed hell's edge. Bridget's alarm rang genuine, shouts rallying neighbors, lanterns piercing the haze. They found him midday, body twisted beside the pike, neck snapped like a brittle branch, skull bruised, chest caved as if stamped by infernal hooves. Dr. James Mallister, coroner with spectacles perched on a beak-like nose, examined under overcast skies. Fall from horse, he decreed, noting fog's treachery and the mare's skittishness. Yet whispers stirred, Hennessy, master rider, felled on a route he knew blind? The horse's terror excessive, as if spurred by unseen horrors. And Bridget's grief? Poignant, yet pragmatic, securing wills, assets, trusts with unseemly haste. The funeral procession wound through fields dusted in early green, hundreds mourning under leaden heavens. Bridget, veiled in black lace, wept decorously, supported by sisters whose expressions held not sorrow, but quiet triumph. As dirt clattered on the coffin, one might ponder divine scales. Was this accident, or retribution for threatening sacred bonds? The Bible warned of pride's fall, of husbands as stewards, not owners. Mere weeks later, Catherine turned her gaze to Hamilton Crawford, banker extraordinaire. In his late 30s, Scottish by blood but Catholic by conversion for a first wife lost to fever, he commanded wealth that could ransom kings. His bank gripped half the county's mortgages, ledgers thick as tomes of judgment. Catherine's approach was masterful. Tuesday visits to his oak-paneled office, scented with ink and polished leather, ostensibly for post-Hennessy finances. Conversations deepened, her vulnerability allure. My sisters, they're my world, she confided, voice trembling like a leaf in breeze. A woman alone invites serpents, dangers unseen. Crawford, siblingless and lonely, melted. Here was loyalty incarnate, a virtue rarer than gold. Engagement in August 1838, wedding in October, a year since Patrick's passing, 7 months post-Hennessy. Crawford relocated, infusing funds and restructuring debts, oblivious to the web. But his banker's acuity pierced veils. A private journal, hidden in his desk drawer, chronicled unease. November 3, 1838, separate accounts insisted upon. Margaret spurns suitors, Sarah deflects them. No marriage is planned? November 18, Bridget's queries on widow rights, too pointed for curiosity. December 1, overheard Pact whispers, unity, legacy. Silence when spotted. December 15, affections wane, family talk trumps intimacy. For are enough, she says. Chill like winter's grasp. Suspicions mounted as Margaret entertained Judge Cornelius Whitman, arbiter of estates. Patterns emerged, courtship, marriage, restructuring, then. Crawford sensed the noose but underestimated its pull. February 8, 1839, brought winter's fury, snow blanketing fields like shrouds, Mill Creek frozen mirror-smooth, deceptive as sin's allure. Crawford's dawn patrols, breath pluming in crystalline air, led him to the creek's edge. The ice, thick and inviting, promised shortcut inspection. What followed? A crack like thunder in Judgment Hall, water's icy embrace claiming him. Drowned in shallows, body blue and rigid, discovered by farmhands amid swirling eddies. Accident, they said, ice's betrayal. But depths hid truths, was it slip, or push from shadows? Divine justice for prying, or mortal design? The sisters' legacy deepened, a tapestry of grief and gain, threaded with spiritual quandaries. Guilt's weight, sin's stain, redemption distant as stars. Yet the farm endured, blood-soaked roots feeding its vitality, a chilling testament to bonds unbreakable, costs eternal. As spring thawed the ground, Margaret's turn approached, her beauty a beacon for the next unwitting soul. But beneath, the Pact's shadow lengthened, whispering of retributions yet to come. In Lancaster's whispers, some spoke of curses, others, of angels avenging. The land, after all, demanded its due, in sweat, in tears, in lives. The winter of 1839 clamped down on Lancaster County like the jaws of some biblical leviathan, its breath a frigid mist that seeped into bones and souls alike. Snowdrifts sculpted the landscape into ghostly undulations, blanketing the Brennan farm in a silence broken only by the occasional crack of branches surrendering to ice's weight. Mill Creek, that serpentine guardian of the northern boundary, had transformed into a glassy expanse, deceptive in its serenity, much like the sisters who walked its banks. The air carried the sharp tang of pine resin and frozen earth, a reminder that nature, like Providence, could turn treacherous without warning. In this frozen tableau, Hamilton Crawford's fate unfolded, a chapter in a saga where human ambition clashed with divine ordinances, echoing the fall of man in Eden's shadowed groves. Crawford's body emerged from the creek's icy clutches like a relic unearthed from judgment's depths. A neighboring farmer, bundled in woolen layers against the biting wind, had ventured out to corral wayward cattle whose hooves left faint imprints in the snow. The discovery came at midday, when the pale sun cast long shadows across the white expanse. There, wedged against a gnarled log half submerged in the thawing current, lay the banker, his skin blue as forgotten hymns, lips parted in a final, silent plea. Water had carried him a quarter-mile downstream, the creek's undercurrents conspiring like unseen sins to conceal the truth. Drowning, compounded by exposure's cruel embrace, painted a picture of tragic mishap, a man too bold in testing nature's boundaries, punished for hubris as in the tales of Icarus or Babel's Tower. Yet Crawford had left a testament, hidden in the iron bowels of his bank's safe. A leather-bound journal whose pages whispered of paranoia turning to prophecy. The final entry, scrawled February 7th under lamplight's flicker, bore the weight of revelation. Catherine knows, I suspect. Her eyes follow me like shadows in confession. She accompanies me everywhere for safety, she claims, but it's surveillance, a warden's watch. Tomorrow, I confront her about Hennessy's fall. If ill befalls me, heed this, look to the sisters. They wear masks of piety, but beneath lurks something unholy, a covenant with darkness that mocks God's natural order. Dr. James Mallister, the coroner whose spectacles fogged in the chill autopsy room, deemed it straightforward. Drowning in winter's grip was a perennial peril in these rural realms, where creeks claimed lives like tides to the reaper. Mill Creek's ice, seemingly armored, hid weaknesses from subterranean springs, warm veins pulsing beneath, thinning the surface like temptation erodes virtue. No marks of struggle marred Crawford's form, no bruises from human hands, no defensive gashes speaking of foul play. It was accident incarnate, or so the medical ledger proclaimed. But in the spiritual undercurrents of Lancaster, where Catholic doctrine intertwined with frontier fatalism, some whispered of divine intervention or its absence. Was this retribution for prying into forbidden knowledge, like Eve's bite from the tree? Catherine's morning unfolded in the farmhouse's great room, where firelight danced on polished oak like restless spirits. She wept with conviction, tears tracing paths down cheeks pale as communion wafers, yet her focus drifted swiftly to ledgers and deeds. Beside Bridget, now a widow twice removed in solidarity, they conferred with attorneys under the glow of oil lamps, securing fortunes with an efficiency that bordered on the profane. Whispers rippled through the community. Two sisters widowed in quick succession, their grief pragmatic as a farmer's almanac. In a society steeped in marital sanctity and the hallowed veil of widowhood, suspicion festered unspoken, like leaven in dough. To accuse was to court scandal, perhaps divine disfavor. After all, Job's trials taught patience in misfortune. 6 weeks post-funeral, as spring's tentative thaw coaxed green shoots from soil still hard as unrepentant hearts, Margaret Brennan's engagement to Judge Cornelius Whitman burst upon the scene like a thunderclap from clear skies. Whitman, at 53, loomed as a colossus in Lancaster's legal firmament, a man whose gavel echoed like Moses' staff striking rock. His rulings shaped destinies from Philadelphia's cobblestone streets to Pittsburgh's smoky forges, his path eyed for the state Supreme Court, a seat of judgment rivaling Solomon's throne. Tall and austere, with silver hair framing a face etched by years of deliberation, he embodied authority tempered by loss. Widowed 5 years, children dispersed like seeds on wind, leaving echoes in his empty townhouse. Margaret's courtship was a masterpiece of subtlety, a dance of vulnerability veiled in virtue. No overt pursuits like her sister's, instead, she materialized in his courtroom in March 1839, a vision in modest muslin, seeking counsel on inheritance intricacies. The chamber, paneled in dark walnut and scented with ink and aged paper, framed her like a portrait of innocence. Her golden curls caught the light filtering through high windows, blue eyes wide with feigned bewilderment. "Your Honor, these laws confound me," she murmured, voice soft as vespers. "We sisters seek only to honor father's legacy, yet statutes seem forged to rend families asunder, not safeguard them, like wolves among lambs." Whitman, accustomed to avaricious airs and bitter contests, found her familial devotion a balm. Here was purity amid corruption, loyalty echoing the biblical Ruth's pledge, "Where you go, I will go." Their dialogues blossomed, from legal precedents to Shakespeare's sonnets, philosophy's ponderings to his own veiled sorrows. Margaret listened with rapt attention, her questions piercing yet gentle, drawing him out like confession from a penitent. She never pressed for intimacy, allowing desire to simmer unspoken. Whitman, his calendar once barren, now anticipated her presence, the scent of lavender she carried, the way her laughter warmed the room like dawn after vigil. The May announcement jolted society, the venerable judge ensnared by the third Brennan, amid a trail of untimely graves. Coincidence or curse? Whispers in taverns and tea rooms invoked Job's afflictions or Pharaoh's plagues. Yet Whitman radiated joy, his stern features softened, as if Margaret had kindled a light in Soul's shadowed corridors. She immersed in his world, poring over case files by candlelight, recalling precedents with uncanny precision, her beauty a counterpoint to his gravitas. But intimacy unveiled fissures. 2 weeks pre-wedding, in the privacy of his study, bookshelves groaning under tomes of law, fire crackling like accusatory murmurs, Margaret confided, "My sisters, they've changed since widowhood. Secretive, obsessed with unity. I fear they're weaving something dark, but what?" Her words hung like incense, absolving or ensnaring? Was this genuine dread, or serpentine guile, planting seeds of doubt to shield her role? The July nuptials were subdued, St. Mary's Church adorned sparingly, evergreens symbolizing endurance amid loss. Guests murmured under vaulted ceilings, stained glass casting kaleidoscopic judgments. Whitman relocated partially to the farmhouse, retaining his town abode for courtly duties, a compromise that afforded distance, yet bound him to the sisters' domain. Weekends immersed him in the stone house's rhythms, meals at the long table, conversations laced with undercurrents. His judicial acuity soon catalogued anomalies. Private notes, later unearthed-like. Buried scripture, chronicled awakening horror. August 10, 1839, Margaret demands my itinerary for domestic harmony, she says. Yet queries fixate on solitary travels, evoking David's scouts before battle. August 25, overheard Bridget and Catherine, final arrangement, complete the plan. Entry silenced my approach, Margaret's fear seemed staged, a player's mask. September 2, discovered her scrutinizing my will, insurance. Learning legalese, she claims, but sophistication belies innocence. Pretense, or deeper deceit. September 15, confronted suspicions sisters. Tears flowed, innocence professed, rehearsed. Victim or virtuoso in this theater of sin? Leveraging his station, Whitman delved deeper, coroner's reports requisitioned, witnesses queried under pretense of legal review. Patterns emerged like constellations in night sky, deaths amid marital discord over relocation, wills amended favorably pre-demise. Accidents timed impeccably, opportunities orchestrated. Most damning, both husbands clashed with wives over fracturing family unity, that sacred Brennan commandment. Yet another thread unraveled, Daniel Murphy, enigmatic investigator prowling Lancaster's fringes. Claiming representation of concerned parties, he probed finances, alliances, matrimonial intents. Whitman's outreach found Murphy vanished, but not before amassing records, deeds, testimonies, like a prophet gathering evidence for end times. External eyes pierced the veil, the conspiracy's isolation cracked. October 30, 1839, rain lashed the farmhouse like heavenly scourge, wind howling psalms of lament. Catherine and Sarah absent in town, leaving the parlor's intimacy, velvet drapes drawn, fire-spitting embers like accusations. Whitman, voice resonant as courtroom decree, confronted, "Margaret, I know your sister's deeds. Are you accomplice, or prey?" She crumpled, color fleeing like guilt from light, hands quaking as if grasping rosary beads. Silence. Stretched, broken by whisper, I've prayed for discovery, to halt them before they force my hand. The confession poured forth, a torrent of revelation staining the air. Bridget's brainchild, forged in post-funeral vigils, for unions, for eliminations, securing empire, defying division's curse. Think like men, Bridget decreed, per Margaret. Violence veiled in patience. Widows grieve, killers calculate unseen. Methods chilling in precision, Hennessy's coffee laced with disorienting elixir, horse spooked at precipice, fall mimicking accident, toxin ephemeral. Crawford's demise, ice sabotaged with heated rods, weak spot engineered. Catherine accompanied, guiding to doom, holding under until cold claimed resistance. 1 minute, Margaret sobbed, but weakness from chill eased the sin. Her own complicity? Reluctant, coerced, refusal meant framing as lone madwoman. Evidence planted, jealousy, greed. 3 united? Unthinkable, 1 deranged? Believable. Whitman's horror mounted, his own execution loomed November 15, poison simulating cardiac woe, plausible for age and strain. Sarah's experiments on Stray's honed dosage, swift yet natural, evading scrutiny. But Murphy's shadow loomed larger, his inquiries a harbinger. Was he ally or adversary? The confession's spiritual toll weighed heavy, sin's contagion, redemption's plea. Margaret begged deliverance, but was it sincere, or ploy to ensnare further? In this web of blood and legacy, divine justice hovered, scales tipping toward revelation or ruin. As rain drummed ceaseless, Whitman pondered next moves: arrest, exposure? The farm's walls closed in, echoing ancient warnings, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Yet human hands had wrought this, demanding earthly reckoning. The sisters' pact, once unbreakable, now frayed under confession's light. But shadows lingered, hinting deeper entanglements, unresolved sins awaiting judgment's dawn. Sarah's turn approached, her charms a final snare. But with Whitman's knowledge, the cycle teetered: redemption possible, or escalation to greater darkness? Lancaster held breath, as if sensing the spiritual storm brewing over Mill Creek's thawed waters. The autumn of 1839 bled into a night of unrelenting storm, as if the heavens themselves wept for the sins festering within the Brennan farmhouse. Rain lashed the stone walls in relentless sheets, drumming on the slate roof like the accusatory fingers of angels. Thunder rolled across Lancaster County's darkened fields, illuminating fleeting glimpses of sodden earth and twisted oaks that clawed at the sky. Inside the parlor, firelight flickered erratically on paneled walls, casting elongated shadows that danced like demons in perpetual torment. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp wool, beeswax candles, and an undercurrent of fear, palpable, metallic, like blood on the tongue. Judge Cornelius Whitman sat rigid, the leather-bound journal trembling slightly in his hands, its pages a Pandora's box of horrors that threatened to unleash retribution long deferred. Margaret's revelation about Daniel Murphy struck like lightning's bolt. The investigator, skulking through taverns and shops with his veiled inquiries, was no external threat, no righteous avenger dispatched by interested parties. He was their creature, bought and bound by Bridget's gold. Bridget hired him to sniff out suspicion, Margaret murmured, her voice barely audible over the storm's roar. To name those whispering too loudly, probing too deeply. Weekly reports, names, conversations, doubts. He keeps us one step ahead, like a sentinel warding off Judgment Day. Whitman's blood ran cold as meltwater from Mill Creek in winter. His discreet inquiries, the requisition reports, the subtle interviews had been catalogued, relayed, dissected in this very house. Perhaps even this confrontation, this tear-streaked confession, was scripted, a feint to disarm him. Lull him into vulnerability before the fatal strike. Doubt not like original sin Eve's apple offered anew. How can I trust this, he demanded, voice low and edged with judicial steel. This journal, your words, another veil in your sister's theater of deceit? Margaret rose, the fire's glow haloing her golden curls like a fallen seraph. She approached the parlor desk, its mahogany surface scarred by years of family ledgers and unspoken pacts. From around her neck dangled a small iron key, cool against her skin, a talisman of secrets. Unlocking the drawer with a click that echoed like a gavel's fall, she withdrew the journal, thick, bound in supple leather worn soft by furtive handling. Everything, she breathed, placing it in his palms, heavy as a confessor's burden. From the first whisper after father's grave. Proof, should Providence demand it. Hoofbeats approached then, muffled by mud and rain, announcing Catherine and Sarah's return. Lantern light bobbed through the windows, piercing the gloom like accusatory eyes. Margaret's gaze locked on his, urgent as a soul at purgatory's gate. Hide it. They cannot know I've spoken. Suspicion means death tonight. Whitman concealed the journal within his coat as the door creaked open, admitting gusts of chilled air in the sisters' fabricated cheer. But in the stolen moments before, he glimpsed its depths, a chronicle transforming suspicion into irrefutable damnation. Margaret's script, elegant yet trembling in places, spanned 3 years of descent from grief to abomination. The Genesis, November 15, 1836, a month post Patrick's interment, when morning curdled into resolve. Bridget offers no true choice, it read. Watch father's empire splinter acres auction to devourers, taxes claiming our birthright or seize destiny. Widowhood is weapon, for unions, for passings, for legacies merged. We'll command half the county, unbound. Entries traced their metamorphosis, grieving daughters to predators prowling society's fringes. Targets assessed with cold strategy, wealth tallied, habits mapped, vulnerabilities exposed like open veins. Hennessy chosen for isolation's ache, a widower craving warmth, ripe for swift vows and revised wills. December 3, 1836, Bridget decrees no guilt. These men perish content, adored. Swift ends, merciful beside our alternative, pauperdom's slow death. Not killers, stewards of survival in a world rigged against Eve's daughters. Yet cracks in resolve surfaced, Margaret's quill betraying inner turmoil. March 16, 1838, Thomas gone. Bridget impassive as carving Sunday roast. Pride, not remorse, challenged her funeral mask. Madness gleams in her eyes, fear chains me silent. Roles crystallized like frost on glass, Bridget, architect of atrocity, intellect ruthless as Pharaoh's heart. Catherine, diviner of desires, wielding empathy like Delilah's shears. Sarah, scout and silent slayer, her innocence a cloak for poisons administered with lullaby smiles. Margaret? The facade of fragility, distress genuine enough to shroud collective guilt, alibi incarnate. Mayonnaise convinces onlookers one pure amid corruption, impossible all complicit. Deeper pages unveiled ambition's abyss. Not 4 deaths to suffice, a genesis for endless harvest. October 25, 1839, Bridget confers with Murphy on expansion, neighboring shires, a sisterhood of widows reshaping Pennsylvania. Marriage and murder is revolution, toppling male thrones. Most immediate, Whitman's doom, etched November 1st. Sarah refines foxglove elixir, 3 drops in brandy evoke cardiac storm, pain, breathlessness, arrest within hours. Undetectable by dawn. Bridget, my widow's woe must convince, stress of bench known to all. Scheduled November 15. As Whitman absorbed this litany of calculated evil echoing Cain's mark, Jezebel's cunning, the front door swung wide. Catherine and Sarah entered, cloaks dripping, faces alight with performative joy. Packages rustled, voices lilting over town trivialities. Margaret shrouded the journal beneath her shawl, Whitman schooled his features to neutrality. Cornelius, Margaret. Catherine trilled, footsteps echoing on flagstones. Town buzzes with tales of our luck and love. Sarah's laughter pealed, crystalline yet chilling. Mrs. Henderson jests we Brennan lasses wield enchantment, men bewitched to early graves. Blood iced in Whitman's veins. Their banter skirted murder's edge, casual as harvest forecasts. Margaret inquired steadily, your reply? Catherine's smile sharpened, predatory in firelight. We cherish our men deeply, fulfill every need, spare unhappiness, relieve burdens of age. Euphemism for euthanasia twisted into mercy, victims preserved in happiness's amber, dying beloved. Rationalization born of madness, defying God's decree on life's sanctity. Sarah bore a tea tray, porcelain clinking ominously. Refreshment, Judge? Tidings you'll find, professionally intriguing. Whitman accepted a cup, steam rising like incense over altar, mind racing. Poisoned already? Catherine reclined where she'd plotted Crawford's plunge, composure serpentine. Federal sleuths probe rural Pennsylvania, she revealed, eyes gleaming. Unnatural demises among affluent gentlemen, widows enriched suspiciously. Sarah chimed sweetly, A Philadelphian queried our family direct, Hennessy's fall, Crawford's drowning, your union with Margaret. Whitman probed, information shared? Abundantly, Catherine laughed. Rumor laced with fact. Federals discerned patterns, organized iniquity. Margaret's clasp bruised his hand. Message unequivocal, scrutiny accelerated, his execution advanced. No leisure till November 15th, tonight, perhaps. Bridget summoned from kitchen, Catherine and Sarah withdrew. Apologies honeyed, privacy a fleeting illusion, walls likely harbored ears. Tonight, Margaret hissed. Federals force haste. Whitman scrutinized her, terror authentic, or apex performance. Proof you're no accomplice in this finale? Journal, vial, props in grand deceit? She delved beneath shawl, producing a vial, clear liquid glinting ominously. Foxglove essence. My task, 3 drops in your brandy, await collapse, summon Mal Lister for natural verdict. The storm raged unabated, mirroring Soul's tempest. Whitman weighed options, flee with her to Philadelphia authorities? Or entrapment, luring him to roadside accident? The journal's evidence, hidden poisons, buried tools, could shatter the web, invoke justice temporal and divine. Yet Sister's network loomed, indebted watchers on pikes, contingencies for flight. Escape fraught as Israel's from Egypt, pursuit inevitable. In parlor's dying embers, with voices murmuring beyond the door like plotting fates, Whitman resolved. Trust fragile as creek ice, he whispered, dawn right to authorities, you testify all. Margaret's eyes welled, redemption's glimmer, or final betrayal. They anticipate. Roads watched, favors owed. Death staged en route. Tea cooled untouched, brandy decanter beckoned innocently on sideboard. Night deepened, thunder receding like judgment postponed. In this crucible of doubt and dread, the Brennan legacy teetered, exposure's light piercing, or darkness swallowing another soul. Sarah lingered in shadows, her role unfinished. The youngest, voice of angels masking venom, poised for the Pact's culmination. But with federal hounds baying and a judge armed with confession, the scales tipped toward reckoning. Or did they? In Lancaster's fog-shrouded annals, truth often drowned quieter than men in Mill Creek. Guilt's architecture, built brick by sinful brick, now trembled. Biblical echoes resounded, be sure your sin will find you out. Yet these women had twisted scripture to suit survival mercy. Killings as covenant, widowhood as promised land. As clock ticked toward midnight, Whitman clutched vial and journal, heart-pounding psalms of deliverance. One misstep, and he joined predecessors in untimely repose. Salvation hung by thread, Margaret's sincerity, Providence's intervention. The farmhouse slept uneasily, wind moaning through eaves like restless spirits of the slain. Hennessy, Crawford, did they watch from beyond, awaiting justice? Or had their merciful ends barred heavenly gates? Dawn approached, fraught with peril. The ride to revelation, or road to ruin? In this tale of bloodbound sisters, divine retribution stirred, inexorable as harvest reaper. November 1, 1839, etched itself into the annals of Lancaster County as a night when heaven's wrath seemed to mingle with earthly judgment. Rain had ceased, leaving the air raw and piercing, saturated with the earthy petrichor of drenched fields and the faint, metallic tang of impending winter. The Brennan farmhouse loomed against a starless sky, its stone facade glistening like the scales of some ancient serpent guarding forbidden secrets. Inside the parlor, embers glowed faintly in the hearth, casting ruddy light on faces taut with the weight of revelation. Judge Cornelius Whitman felt the vial's cool glass in his palm, foxglove extract, harbinger of feigned heart failure, passed from Margaret's steady yet trembling hand. Her eyes, blue as Mill Creek's treacherous depths, held his without wavering. If complicity bound me still, she whispered, voice threading through the tension like a rosary bead in confession, the poison would already course your veins. This surrender proves my soul's allegiance to truth, to redemption, perhaps to God's delayed mercy. From the kitchen drifted murmurs, rising in urgency, Bridget's commanding timbre issuing directives, Catherine's measured responses, Sarah's softer interjections laced with deceptive sweetness. The sisters plotted in shadows, unaware or perhaps sensing that their web frayed. Time compressed, minutes ticking like the pendulum of fate in some divine clockwork. Margaret leaned closer, breath warm against the chill. One more truth. The journal pales beside Bridget's ledger, meticulous tallies of pilfered fortunes, manipulated deeds, inheritances twisted like vines choking oaks. She deems it insurance, leverage for allies, blackmail for threats. Concealed in father's cellar desk, behind a false panel. I've shadowed her accesses, memorized the mechanism for this precipice, where blood yields to conscience. Bridget's voice sharpened audibly, final orders, contingencies invoked. The Pact's culmination loomed, accelerated by federal shadows encroaching. Whitman's resolve crystallized, forged in judicial fires. We flee now. Rear door, my stallion, straight to Lancaster, federal auspices. Let your sisters unravel explanations for vanished victim and turncoat. They rose, footsteps muffled on worn rugs, toward the back passage. But Sarah's call sliced the air, honeyed yet edged. Margaret, Cornelius, join us? Bridget bears tidings vital to all. A command veiled in courtesy. Refusal would ignite suspicion's blaze. Margaret's gaze met his, love intertwined with terror, hope flickering like vigil candles. Enter that kitchen, she breathed, and eternity may claim us. Whitman, arbiter of countless fates over 27 years on the bench, sentencing thieves, absolving the penitent, faced his profoundest verdict. Compliance risked entrapment in murderer's lair, flight preserved life but unleashed them upon wider realms, ambition's tendrils spreading like locusts. Fate intervened with hoofbeats, multiple, galloping with purpose through mud. Through rain-streaked panes, torches bobbed, a cadre of riders, disciplined, armed. No social callers, this was authority incarnate. Federal marshals, Margaret exhaled, recognition dawning from their formation's precision. Kitchen chaos erupted, chairs scraped, drawers slammed, whispers frantic as cornered beasts preparing exodus or ambush. Bridget materialized in the doorway, composure fractured into steely resolve. Cornelius, Margaret, align our narrative ere they arrive. Certain fictions serve, truths, in danger. Even cornered, she spun webs, manipulation her sacrament. Whitman interposed protectively. No. Margaret and I recount verity. You answer for your abominations. Fury unveiled her core, eyes blazing like hellfire glimpsed through piety's mask. Foolish zealot. Law your shield? Marshals barter justice for coin when fortune's in facades. Teeter. Sarah flanked her, innocence shed like sloughed skin, vindictiveness bared. Protection bought, alliances forged. 3 years perfection, blind eyes turned for tribute. Catherine completed the blockade, smile serpentine. Justice cited, judge, nearly priced beyond your purse. Implication thundered, corruption's canopy shielded them, high officials complicit, enriched by blood wealth or promised favors. Pounding fists rattled the door. Federal marshals. Open forthwith. Bridget composed distress, damsel imperiled. Recall, Cornelius, you wielded documents, forged legacies, orchestrated mishaps. Margaret, traumatized confessor exposing spousal villainy. The portal yielded, 6 marshals stormed in, revolvers glinting, badges authoritative under lantern glow. Leader Davies, grizzled and unyielding, scanned the tableau. Marshal William Davies, Eastern District. Judge Cornelius Whitman arrested, conspiracy to murder, fraud, judicial corruption. Accusation struck like gavels, mallet inverted. Framed, his probes twisted into guilt's garb. Margaret advanced, tears authentic torrents. Marshal, you err. My husband innocent. My sisters slew Hennessy, Crawford. Proof abounds. Bridget countered seamlessly, strain on hinges poor Margaret, delusions of sororicide. Dr. Mal Lister attests instability. Davies' gaze pierced veils. Mrs. Whitman, Daniel Murphy testifies, systematic spousal murders for gain. Hope ignited in Margaret, panic flickered among sisters. Catherine parried, Murphy our hireling, probing perils to us. His betrayal? Bought by foes. Davies pressed, Murphy tendered ledgers, thefts chronicled, vials, forgeries, correspondences delineating conspiracy. Sarah fractured, he vowed destruction for payment. Outburst damning, confession unwitting. Bridget's glare venomous, doom sealed. Further, Davies intoned, Whitman's affidavits via proxies, these weeks detailing discovery, evidence amassed. Whitman bewildered, no such submissions. Dawn broke, Margaret's clandestine alliance with Murphy, federal conduits. Weeks of subtle betrayal, for justice. She produced the journal. All herein, murders mapped, dialogues damning. Evidence gathered since Hennessy's fall, for restitution to the slain. Marshals shackled the three, Bridget's parting defiance echoed Old Testament perversion, mercy we bestowed, sparing decrepitude, penury, decay. Love unblemished till end. History vindicates, rebels against patriarchal chains. Led into night, torches illuminating chains, the sisters vanished toward Philadelphia's cells. Whitman grasped Margaret's valor, not merely his salvation, but thwarting whiter plague, a widow network poised to infest states, harvesting lives indefinitely. The 1840 trial riveted Pennsylvania, sensational spectacle under gaslights in crowded galleries. Evidence, journals, ledgers unearthed from Sellers' false panel, Murphy's trove, Margaret's testimony, irrefutable. Bridget, Catherine, Sarah convicted, multiple murders, conspiracy. First women hanged in state annals, March 15, 1841, triune noose on scaffold, precisely 3 years post Hennessy's accident. Crowds murmured psalms and imprecations as traps sprang, bodies swaying like pendulums of retribution. Margaret, immunized for cooperation, and Whitman fled eastward shadows, resettling Ohio incognito, names shed like old sins, though nightmares lingered. The farm auctioned, restitution to bereaved kin. Stonehouse razed, foundations salted metaphorically, earth reclaimed, now beneath mundane commerce, a shopping plaza where shoppers tread oblivious to blood's residue. Yet archives, unearthed decades hence, unveiled tentacles, analogous widow slayings in Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, patterns mirroring Brennan modus. Disciples? Or parallel evils inspired by whispered lore? The case birthed precedents, familial conspiracies scrutinized, inheritance deaths probed rigorously. It shattered illusions, evil cloaked in femininity's grace, exploiting chivalry's blind spot. Society's reluctance had armored them, women incapable of such calculus? A fallacy fatal. Lingering queries haunt, undetected acolytes? Modern echoes, facades of devotion veiling avarice? History's underbelly teems with unseen graves, conspiracies dissolved in time's acid. The Brennan legacy endures not in land, but caution, monsters masquerade as martyrs, mercy is murder. Divine scales balance belatedly, yet thoroughly, sin's harvest reaped in full. In Lancaster's contemporary lanes, few recall the sisters who prized unity above souls. But fog rolling off Mill Creek sometimes carries whispers, eternal, accusing. Blood binds deepest, but truth and judgment sever cleanest. What lingers in your mind from this abyss? Undiscovered victims? Contemporary parallels veiled in normalcy? Share theories below, darkness thrives in silence. If chills course your veins, like this video, subscribe for more veiled histories, notify for unveilings. Share with fellow shadow seekers. Until next descent into the past's hidden horrors.